So I have an interesting theory that I would like to discuss with you, and I would like to keep this a theory. This is not proven. This is all allegations. So I want to make it very clear that I'm not slandering Nintendo in any way, shape, or form. But I have noticed something interesting. So through the generations, Nintendo has made it a practice to extend the GameCube to the Wii and the Wii to the Wii U, and now we have the Nintendo Switch, in which there can no longer be the exclusive Wii U games that require dual screens to run. That's just a thing that can't happen anymore because there are no longer dual screens. So we understand that. That makes sense, okay? It's logical. Now, the question is that a lot of people have not noticed where Nintendo has been putting Wii U games onto the Switch, but more often people are saying, oh, this is to make up for the lack of content. This is to make up for the lack of Switch games because they haven't had the Switch enough to develop for it properly, right? Well, that is exactly what a lot of people would think, and I don't down them for thinking that either. My case in point here, and the question I am asking is, have we been just rebuying failed Wii U games? So, how many games came over from the GameCube straight onto the Wii? I think everyone remembers the biggest one, which was Twilight Princess. It was a dual release, and if you notice, we have Zelda being released for the Wii U, and of course, the Switch, as one of the biggest hitter games of the year for that system. Right, okay, we get that, we understand that. But there are certain games that are being released from the Wii U back onto the Switch. Games that were super successful, which makes great sense. Mario Kart, right? That makes a lot of sense to release that onto the Switch because a lot of people bought it on the Wii U. Why not put every bit of DLC, add a few small touches, touch up some things here and there with the coding, make it more stable online, and boom, you got yourself a major hit for the Switch. Yeah, okay, I'm with you there. But the thing is, they've also been thinking about and releasing games that have not been that successful, like Pokken Tournament Fighter. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's a bad game necessarily, I'm saying it's a different game, it's a strange game, it's a strange breed, kind of like they're trying to get into esports with the fighting scene with that type of game, and then they're coming out with ARMS too, so not really sure what their end game with this is, whether they're just producing games or they want to be in the esports. I think it has a lot to do with the online service too. So remember, take into account my idea here, my theory here, is that not just one point of view, but there's multiple things that need to be incorporated. So you still have to have these games with online support and functionality to make the online service that you're going to be paying for worth the money, because if there's not enough games to play online, why would you buy the online service? That is conveniently being delayed to 2018. And again, someone might make the case and say, well, that's because they have to clean up the network and make it work real good. Okay, I got you, cool, fine with me, you know, delay it to 2018, make sure it works. But with all that said, I think we've been rebuying failed Wii U games. And I think Nintendo is going to re-release a lot of these failed Wii U games. And when I mean failed, they could have either bombed themselves or they failed because the Wii U itself failed. So these games that were released didn't sell multi-millions worth of copies, and instead, unfortunately, they kind of went to the grave, man. Whether or not they were decent games, it was just the simple fact that the console was so terrible, people didn't want to buy it in comparison to what they had out with competition, which was the PS4 and the Xbox One. And now we have the Xbox One S capable of 4K and the PS4 Pro. Of course, no one's going to want the Wii U. That system's almost 5+ years old. It's getting there, man, getting there in years. So no one's going to buy it. So what do you do when you have all these games that didn't sell that well, but you poured a lot of time, assets, and money into them? Well, of course, you're going to port them over to the next system if it works that well. The Wii U's architecture and the Switch's architecture is very similar under the fact that they're not using the unique PowerPC formula and technology anymore. So the best comparison I can make is that the PlayStation 3 cannot be emulated very well and properly onto the PlayStation 4. You can't just take a PlayStation 3 disc, pop it in the PS4, and just play the game on the same architecture. They can't just recode the game to say, hey, this is a PS4 now, you can work on a PS4, play the game. They can't do that. It's a completely different processor. And while the Tegra chip that is in the Switch is slightly different, it is the same type of coding process. We're not talking about going from x32 instructions to x86. We're not talking about PowerPC instructions. We're not talking about Linux code being slapped straight right onto another system that runs Windows and saying, hey, work. Because it doesn't work that way. It won't work that way. You have to recode things. And I'm also not saying that they aren't recoding the games, but I am saying that they have these games. They have a pile of games, man. Think about how many great games came out on the Wii U. Really good games did come out. Smash Brothers, Mario's, you know, you had the Zeldas. They were good games. They were all right, man. They sold copies. People enjoyed them. Genuinely fun games. But what do you do with this pile of great games that were first party and maybe a few third party games mixed in there as well? What do you do with that pile when you have a new system and they didn't sell that well and you don't have a lot of games for your new system? Well, of course, you're going to say, hey, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's recode these games and let's put them onto the Nintendo Switch from the Wii U. And it makes sense from an economic standpoint. It makes sense from a company standpoint. If you don't have enough product, you've got to supplement it somehow. And back in the day when the Wii U did first come out, they only had a very select few games that was even worth picking up the system for. And a lot of people didn't want to pick it up until they actually did release a few interesting games that made it ideal to pick up. You know, like Smash Brothers, like Splatoon. You can say what you want about that Mario game that was there at launch, but a lot of people thought that they just took the previous Mario game from the Wii and just upscaled it and changed it around a little bit, and there you go. And there's no lying when people are saying that's exactly what happened and what occurred. There might be more nuance in it, there might be more hours poured into it, but taking an existing code, taking an existing game, okay, you have the graphics already predetermined. You might have to upscale them, you might have to add things to them, but you already have an idea. You're not sitting down at a drawing board literally storyboarding the graphics, the story itself, the gameplay itself. You're not doing that because you already have that done. And that's one of the biggest differences when you're doing coding and porting over games. So obviously it's way easier to take a pre-existing game than to sit there and say, hey, we need you to get an artist up here, we need you to get a writer up here, we need you to get a team up here, we need you to start working on a beta, you know, 3 years ago, okay, and you know what I'm saying? So they already have all of those assets, and all they have to do is grab a couple coders and say, look, we have this game right here, we want you to turn it into this. Do we need more artists? Do we need this? Do we need that? What needs redrawn? Can we access anti-aliasing? Can we use 1080p? What's it gonna take to get 60 FPS out of this? You know, and you ask these questions to a coding team versus an entire production team, you know, filled with individuals who are overseers. So obviously, I feel that Nintendo is taking those Wii U games, be them successful or not, and you have games that are going to be coming out on the Switch that are extremely similar. I think it'll be interesting to see how Splatoon 2 looks, plays, as opposed to the Wii U version. Again, I'm not saying that they're carbon copying and taking Splatoon itself and putting it onto the Switch, but from what I've seen, it feels like they're taking the same exact engine and a lot of the assets, a lot of the sounds, a lot of the music files, and they're just going to add to it slightly, and they're going to change up the gameplay slightly, and they're going to add in a few new things. Maybe every bit of unlockable content will be unlocked in that game, and then the new stuff will be locked, and there you go. You have yourself a new game that's going to be sold for $60. You can see it in Pokemon Tournament Deluxe, Pokken Tournament Deluxe. You can see all these DLC characters that were coming out, that were new characters that probably would have went over to the Wii version if it was super successful, and it just wasn't that successful, and now you're having that stuff come out onto the Switch. And the same thing could be seen with Mario Kart. And while Mario Kart was extremely successful, all they did was package everything together and tweak it up and put it onto the Switch. And that's all I'm detailing and discussing here. I'm not saying that Nintendo are a terrible company for doing this. I'm not saying that they are milking their fans or anything like that. That's subjectively based upon your own biased opinion. Do you feel like you're being taken for a ride? Do you feel like you're being milked? Do you feel like this game is not worth $60? Then don't buy the game. It's that simple. But I feel everyone's groaning pains when they end up being asked to pay $60 for the same game that they bought 3 years ago, and it's almost identical. It's very similar in nature. It's not like going from Mario 64 to Mario Mario Sunshine. That's the point I'm trying to make. So I feel like Nintendo is just taking old Wii U games and porting them over because they were either very successful or complete failures and trying to recoup the lost money and assets while filling in the gaps of missing games on the Nintendo Switch. If anyone would like to argue this point to me, feel free, drop a comment in the section below. I am always open to new ideas and interpretations. I would really appreciate it if you could share this with someone who is either a Nintendo fanboy or not a Nintendo fanboy and get their own opinions as well, because it would be really great to get contrasting and similar opinions to see if, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. It'd be nuts. So ladies and gentlemen, I've been your host, Protomario. I'm signing out. As always, good gaming, God bless, and I hope you guys have a great day and great week.